Welcome to the JAMODI podcast, where we interview coaches and leaders to find out not just what they do, but how they do what they do. Becoming the best version of ourselves is JAMODI, just a matter of doing it. What is one quality that you see in leaders that coaches need to cultivate in their own habits?
Whenever I was thinking about this, I think consistency is probably one of the most important things, and that's as a coach, as a player. I think even in the if you're in the corporate world, whatever, for a player, I think it looks like being on time. Having the same energy every day. I think about the players that I played with that were great leaders. They had a consistency about them that was just, it was so reliable that you could trust them, that you could follow them. And so I think as a coach, as a player, if you want to be a great leader, you have to model that and you have to be that every day. And so we all have days we don't want to come in, and especially as a player, I think because of the physical aspect of it, there's days where you just don't feel good, you don't feel as energetic. And those are the days you got to grind and earn that leadership status. And you can't really take a day off. And so I think as coaches that I've worked for, from Coach Quigley at Naaman to Coach Thomas, coaches that I played for, Coach Sagona, Coach Riesman at Tarleton State. I mean, all of them were very consistent in their approach and very consistent in what they demanded of us. There wasn't a lot of confusion in what the expectations were. And so whenever I think of leadership, I think of consistency, like making it clear, not being all over the place with your expectations, and then modeling those expectations of the way that you pour into your team and putting in the extra time. We ask our players to be consistent in their work ethic. Well, am I being consistent in my work ethic and the way that I prepare and the way that I, get them ready for their games and prepare practice plan and prepare, film or whatever it is that we need to do to help us win. So I think that consistency is really important.
Yeah, I've known you for, again, we've said 15 years, and been able to watch you as a coach, as a player, and then also, as a father, and then the family man that you are. And I do believe that you're one of the most, I'm sure you've had a bad day or two the last 15 years. I haven't seen it, or I haven't really felt it or noticed it, where some people, you can see it, you can hear it in their speech, you can maybe see it in their actions, or how they approach things. What is it about you? I'm going to dive in a little bit more into you. What is it about you that just makes you so consistent?
Well, I think number one, it's my faith, just being a Christian, being a Christ follower. Like, I feel like, we have to, if we're going to live that out daily, not that we don't have struggles, we don't have highs and lows, we don't have things that happen to us, but when we have that faith and that peace that rests in our relationship with God, I think that, it's a little bit easier to be consistent and maybe not panic, not, just overreact to things, and to maybe realize that there's a purpose in the struggle. And, there's so many things that are out of our control on a daily basis that, if we overreact to those things, I just think, it shows a lack of faith and trust. And so I don't know. I mean, there's definitely times I get angry, and you've seen that on the court. I think probably in the competitive realm is where I've struggled the most. I'm sure there's some referees out there, if they hear this, they'd be like, man, Coach Clarkson really gave it to me, a time or two. But, even in that, I've tried to get better, when I play, when I coach, to keep that competitive fire like under control to where it doesn't affect my thought process.
And it doesn't damage the mission, your
Right.
mission and what you represent.
Right. No question. And I think on the court is probably where I've struggled the most with that, to be who I know God wants me to be and who I want to be, a light for others. And on the court has been some of the times where I've probably tarnished that, just getting into that competitive fire and letting it get the emotions get the best of me a few times. So
I mean, I can't think of any examples that come to mind that,
well,
but
you gave me a clip of our Baylor
that's right.
matchup where you claim I pushed you in the back, but that
That's
was
the only way you could have taken that rebound from me, is if and how did I end up on the floor just out of nowhere? But that was our first interaction, wasn't it?
well, that was I met you when you were in high school.
Uh,
Actually, I came over with Coach Quigley to pick up Metrocrest jerseys at the Colony High School, and you happened to be in the locker room. And I wasn't far removed from college, so I kind of knew the players and enjoyed watching basketball, and so I knew who the top recruits were in the area, and
you
so
thought you could take me instantly when you saw me. You thought,
well,
not he's not
you were
special.
pretty jacked in high school, man. I think you had a big bottle of something up there, like some energy powder, protein that you.
Advocare, Coach Thomas sold us. It was POS2, and it had protein and creatine in it. So when we showed up to play Louisville the next year, they all were asking us like, "What are you guys doing?" Because we were all pretty jacked. And what a great Coach Thomas. That was brilliant. Like you have a built-in clientele, your own players that you're selling Advocare products
Well,
to.
speaking of Coach Thomas, I stayed with Coach Thomas last weekend. Went down to the Auburn A&M game to watch my nephew play. He plays for Auburn, and we spent the night with Coach T and Joyce and the four dogs, and it was
Nice.
amazing. So we talked about you a little bit,
Huh.
just the good times, man, the good times. So yeah, we're definitely that circle. That's one thing we can talk about is just relationships. I mean,
Yeah.
who would have thought if you look at that whole story of how you ended up with me and then me even ended up with Coach Thomas that year coaching. I mean, there's just so many things that, you know, me being down there playing you guys at Baylor in that exhibition game and, he and I interacting. And so, yeah, that all comes back to you because he was there to watch you. So we're all, it's
The
crazy.
keystone. The
Yeah.
keystone.
It's crazy how life works.
It is. It is, but I think it's all Coach Thomas's coaching tree, which I mean, it's pretty cool to see that really grow and blessed to be a part of
Mhm.
his even as a player, but a part of his tree.
Yeah.
One thing you said, I do think it's such a difficult line for anybody. I mean, obviously for believers, but even for non-believers, is to balance that competitive fire that you have without letting it, spill over. I think it's Doc Rivers said, like, how competitive can you be while maintaining your discipline?
Hmm.
And I know as a player it's really hard to do, but then as a coach, it's really hard to do. But then when you have the value system that we have, there's just another. It's almost like the ultimate out of bounds or check or marker to keep us, in check. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I've literally found myself on Sunday night driving up to play in the men's league, just saying a little prayer, God, let me represent you well. I mean, just keep my composure. It's not, when you really think about it, it's even with our high school games. I mean, there's nothing worth compromising your integrity and your character. And sometimes that competitiveness just can take us to that edge. So I think keeping it in perspective. I know Coach Thomas said this weekend. He said, when I got out of coaching, I couldn't believe that everybody didn't just hang on all my games and even know if we won or lost. Because he doesn't even know when we win or lose half the time, since he's not coaching anymore. And so it gave him a perspective, right? Where when he was in the midst of it, it's like everything weighed on that game and whether they won or lost in our career.
Yeah.
And I think we can have that bigger perspective and what we're really trying to do with our jobs, especially being leaders of young men, to make sure that we're holding that ourselves to a high standard.
My first year at Faith, we shot the ball pretty well back in 13, 14. Shot the ball pretty well and broke some records. And I started to look. And then the next year we came back and we hit 432 threes in that year. And I just thought, this is incredible. It's like I looked at the NFHS records and it was like top 10 all time in the history of high school sports, like our team up there. And then I looked like we've got about 8 other records that we're eligible for. So I printed out all the paperwork and I filled it all out, sent it in and waited like by my computer. And a month later, I got a response from NFHS saying, because you're not recognized in public school and by NFHS, we can't honor any of your records.
Oh
And it
wow.
was just this moment of, God, like this doesn't matter. Like I was so caught up in maybe a little bit of me and what this could look like and legacy and all that stuff. But what a great, kick in whatever to remind myself like it's not about how many threes we hit, how many wins, but really about those relationships. Because I think at that point, if I look back at those early teams, I lost sight of that a little bit of it was more about what could we do statistically rather than will these guys invite me to their wedding one
Yeah.
day and what will they take away from basketball more than just becoming more efficient shooters.
Right. And I think that was one of the things that one of the questions was, what would I do different? Like one thing I would do different if I could go back. And I think it's spending more time. I think especially as a young head coach, you're so focused and maybe feeling a little pressure that, this is my chance to prove that what I do works. And even though so many things are out of your control, not to take that ownership of that off you, but in high school basketball, I mean, there's just so many things that are out of our control. And, taking the time, maybe even at the expense of being on the court as much, to really dig in with your players, whether it be one-on-one meetings, team dinners, taking time just to enjoy each other a little more than just grinding every day. Although that's important and that builds a bond as well. But just to spend more time, and making it more of a priority to spend that one-on-one time with your players to get to know them better, to you know ask them their thoughts sometimes. I think sometimes especially when you're younger as a coach, you just want to tell them how it is. And I think I've gotten to where hopefully my players would say that I ask them and listen to them and want their input, and that they would feel comfortable in the right setting telling me, hey, coach, what about this? What about this? And so I think that's the one thing I would do different for
Yeah.
sure.
One thing about perspective and kind of our talk keeps revolving around that is keeping perspective. You gave me this nugget years and years ago. I think I asked you what's the toughest thing about coaching or high school coaching, and you said it's because you're competitive. Your success as a coach, winning and losing, it rests a lot on 15, 16, and 17-year-olds. And just sometimes the frustration with that feeling and everything. But how have you been able to deal with that over the years? Because even in college, I mean, they're young men. Most of them come for the reason of playing basketball, and they have aspirations further than that. But this high school thing is you get an interesting blend of kids that just want to be a part of a team, love basketball, like it, hopefully, and have just always played. And then you've got a couple that you can dangle that carrot of they want to play after. But when your success revolves around, as far as just wins and losses, what those 15, 16, 17-year-olds do, how have you grown or gotten better at handling that?
Well, I think that's kind of goes to the struggle sometimes when great players maybe don't make great coaches, is because their whole their approach to the game, they expect every player to have that, right? And I think, you know, I think I kind of thought that. I thought, well, every player that plays basketball in high school was the same way I was, who wanted to stay in the gym until coach made me leave or turn the lights out. And then I remember at our 10-year reunion, I was talking to for our basketball team, because we went to the state championships. So our coaches had a 10-year reunion, and it was great to get together. But one of the guys was like, "Man, when I was in high school, I just kind of was wanting to go." And he rode horses and took care of horses. He's like, "I just want to get over there and take care of my horse." And I was like, really? Like, I didn't even know that there was on our team like that. And So I think as a coach, you have to realize there's all different. It really takes all those different types of players to win, and maybe not everybody's going to be pouring as much time, but there is a role for them, whether it's making us better as a practice player,
Yeah.
grinding us every day, or I think that just understanding that teams are always going to have that type of dynamic, especially at the high school level, and that giving them value with a role is really important. And I think that goes back to the conversations and the relationships is that, not to just let them figure out their role all the time, but that does happen sometimes, but to try to give them their roles and identify those roles and what they can really bring to the table. And so I think giving them a role and helping them to understand that and how they can help the team can kind of bridge that a little bit.
Yeah. Because it's our profession, but it's their game.
Right.
And for some of us, it goes from a game that we've loved since we were 9 to being the thing that it becomes our profession. But a lot of them, like the horse riding guy, he was just thinking of doing other things. So keeping that in mind, we have to have that balance of teaching and coaching in a way that will further the growth and the career of those players that do have maybe the same aspirations as us, but then respecting the fact. And it just maybe this story popped in my head of my year with you at Naaman, and I'm blanking on the kid's name, but he was a senior. He wore goggles or glasses. Maybe I can't remember a number, maybe 32 or something, but I was in that mode of, hey, this isn't going to work in college, guys. What you're doing right now, it's not going to work at the next level. And I don't know how many times I used that phrase, next level. And finally, the kid was like, Coach, I don't want to play at the next level. And it just, as a 25-year-old, it floored me. Like, what are you doing here? Like, what's the point? But I think most of us, I mean, I don't know what the percentage is, but it's probably like 25% next level, 75% coach. I don't want to do that. I've got other things I'm interested in. So we have to respect, and this has taken me 14 years to 15 years to get to this point. Respect the fact that they have other interests, but then become creative in your practices and how you spend your time and what you do to where that it's meaningful for them.
Yeah, because we do need doctors and lawyers and other professions, engineers. Like I don't think we can just have basketball coaches, unfortunately. So, but yeah, I think I think a lot of that goes back to the coach, right? Giving value to every player, and I think that we're all guilty at times of pouring more time and effort into our best players, and so I think that goes back to that thing I learned, and hopefully that I do better now is to try to pour into every kid and
Yeah.
not neglect the kids who maybe have a smaller role in the team. And because again, I was just in the gym today with my team, and we put a kid on the line, for the end of practice to make a shot, and it's like, he's got to be able to make that. What if that's him, at the end of a game making that shot, even though he doesn't shoot a lot, to win a game, and so we got to make sure that we're pouring into those guys and giving them the same attention.
Yeah, I mean, just when you said that, making those free throws at the end of games, one thing this completely changes directions, but it has to do with giving players those opportunities, putting them in those opportunities. One thing we do in pickup during the spring and summer is anytime they play, they have to cap the win. So
Mhm.
if I score the winning bucket for my team, I have to go to the free throw line. If I miss it, the score goes back 1 point, and it's the other team's ball, and we continue play. So you stamp your win. That's what it is. You stamp your win. I don't know why not do that now in practice. So even, I mean, every game that you play, whether it's something full court, whether it's a 3-on-3, 4-on-4, or 5-on-5, and you're just working on different aspects. Like we have a game called Kill where you've got to get 3 stops in a row, or even you got to have 3 makes in a row. Why not have that kid that scores stamp the win? So because you're working on the pressure free throw, but then also reacting if there's a miss. I don't know. I might start doing that. Thanks, man.
Yeah,
Good.
I love creating those, trying to create those situations in practice because that's the one thing about free throws in particular is it's really hard to recreate that feeling that you would have at the line in a big situation. And so, you know, any of those shooting drills where you can put time and maybe in a row or a certain makes and so much time to meet a score, they feel that pressure. I think in a row is a big one.
Yeah, man.
I know when I've done it and had my players do it, I feel like having to make so many in a row at a spot puts a feeling of that pressure that you might feel on a big shot in a game.
Yeah,
Uh,
you nailed it. I think we have to look at and any shooting that you do, there's a time for volume, but I think the time for volume is in the spring and summer on their own, uh, or maybe strategically put in a practice or after weights or something. But I don't know. Again, percentages, maybe 90% to 10%, 90% in a rows where
mhm,
there's time, there's a score that they have to get to. Because the two reasons why shooters miss in games is they practice too slow and they
mhm,
practice without pressure. And to think that as coaches that if we just tell them, guys, you got to practice fast, you got to practice with pressure. Okay, like
yeah,
yeah, they're going to go do that immediately. No, naturally we want to be comfortable, and so I think when anytime we're talking about shooting, man, we have to create that type of pressure. So that's a good reminder, man.
yeah. Those time shooting drills and uh, you know, giving them a mark and the in a row I love. I mean, I started doing that. I used to train some kids shooting and I used to use three in a row a lot. Maybe if I was doing a certain drill with them that they had to make three in a row, sometimes it was five. But I think that just puts a little bit of that pressure on them. And I love the capping the win. I actually I got that from some of the pro runs that I was doing up at Prestonwood. They wanted to do that one day, and I loved it because I think the first time we did it was like three misses before they won. And these are guys that are playing for money.
Yeah.
So, and there was some pressure. Like you could tell that they were feeling the pressure to make that shot, and so it works. I mean,
Yeah.
it really does.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the JAMODI podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.